Hi folks, this is Jim at your Jiffy Customer Support Network. In this segment we're going to cover the proper procedure for changing out the propane fuel delivery system on a Jiffy Model Pro4 propane powered ice drill. Anytime that you're looking at doing repair work or replacing certain parts on the Jiffy Model Pro4 propane powered ice drill, you're going to want to take note that there are two different generation Pro4 units, and depending on the repair or the replacement, you're going to want to make sure that you identify which generation Pro4 model that you have. If you're replacing the carburetor, or if you're replacing the propane fuel delivery system, or changing out the throttle control, these are specific ones that there are different steps to completing the procedure for those replacements. So you're going to want to make sure that you identify the unit that you have. The two generation models are shown in the video here. The first unit on the right is the first generation, and it's identified by noting the aluminum fuel line that attaches the carburetor to the regulator, shown here in the video. Again, that's the first generation Pro4 model. The second generation Pro4 is shown here on the left, and the first thing you'll note the absence of the aluminum fuel line, because the carburetor and the regulator are attached directly by this brass fitting. That's the major difference between the two models, but it does create specific differences in the steps taken in the procedure of replacing those particular parts. So you want to make sure you take note of that. The first step we're going to be taking in replacing the fuel delivery system on the Generation 2 Jiffy Model Pro4 is to remove the clamp that holds the black propane fuel line in position below the valve cover. This is the clamp around the black line that I'm talking about that has to be loosened up. There's just a hex-headed screw that holds that in position that we'll have to loosen up using a 3/16 ratchet drive wrench. The next step will be to remove the throttle lever from the operator's control handle on the spark plug side of the unit. This can be done with a medium-sized Phillips screwdriver by just loosening the retention screw that holds the throttle lever to the handle. Then once that's free, we'll just move that off to the side. Then the next step we're going to take is to remove the air cleaner assembly. First we'll remove the air filter cover, then the foam air filter element, then we'll go ahead and remove the air cleaner backplate by removing the retention nuts. You can use a 5/16 nut driver to remove those. We want to make sure we put those aside because we'll be using those to mount this back up again. Get the other one off here. Next step is to remove the retention clamp for the back plate, and we'll go ahead and slide the air cleaner back plate off. We'll go ahead and you'll see that the breather fits in the back of the air cleaner back plate and also into the side of the cylinder. We'll just pull that out of the side of the cylinder and set that aside. The next step we'll take is to undo the handle mounting screw that holds the handle to the gearbox. We'll have to remove that so we can slide the regulator out, otherwise that screw and that is in the way. And then basically all we'll have to do is slide that whole assembly off the engine. One thing that we're going to want to note is that there is a gasket that fits between the air cleaner backplate and the carburetor that we want to set aside because we'll need that for reassembly. The next step we want to take is to remove the carburetor from the fuel delivery system, and what I'm going to recommend is make a mark on the side of the carburetor and also on the fitting so we get the proper location of the carburetor when we reassemble it. Then we'll go ahead and using a crescent wrench, go ahead and unscrew the carburetor from that brass fitting. Till that's off. The next step we want to take is to mount the new regulator to the carburetor. I've already put a mark on the new regulator to match up with the mark that we put on the carburetor before, to make sure we get that all in the right location. So first of all, we'll remount the regulator back to the carb. Again, making note, line those two lines up so they're back in order. And the next step we're going to take is to go ahead and remount the throttle cable to the carburetor. And again, we'll mount the threaded end of the cable into the mounting bracket and thread that on. And we'll thread that until we see that end of the cable slightly coming out the top of the bracket. And all you want is one thread of that end of the cable through the top of the bracket. Then you're going to want to tighten the jam nut, because that's the proper location for reassembly of that part. So we get the throttle in the right place, and we'll tighten that jam nut up. And the next step will be remounting the throttle wire back to the pivot post on the throttle lever. One thing I'm going to note here is you'll note that the throttle wire has a ball end on it, and the pivot post that the wire mounts to has a larger opening on one end of the slot that the wire fits in. You want to make sure that the ball fits in that wider end for proper location of the wire. Here I'll just take a needle nose pliers and open the throttle up, position the wire in the slot, and get that back in the proper position. And we'll just want to operate the throttle to make sure everything operates properly. Then the next step we'll want to take is to go ahead and remount the entire assembly back onto the unit. Make sure the air cleaner gasket is in position on the air cleaner backplate. Slide the backplate on. And again, we want to press the breather back into the side of the cylinder. Nice and tight. So that's tightly fit in there. And we'll take the retention clip for the air cleaner backplate, put that on. Then the two retention nuts. Tighten those up so they're nice and snug. Then the foam air filter element. And then the air cleaner cover. And the next step we'll take is route the control handle under the black propane line and also under the propane tank mounting bracket. And then go ahead and remount that throttle lever back on the operator's handle, just by tightening up the retention screw that holds that lever in place, and get that nice and snug so that's all tight. and just operate that to make sure that the throttle again operates properly. Then the next step would be to put the black propane fuel line clamp back in position to hold that fuel line in position under the cylinder, and also to remount the bolt that holds the handle to the gear case that we took off before to get the regulator out. Also on the Generation 2 Jiffy Model Pro4 propane powered ice drill, anytime you work on the propane fuel system, whether it be on the carburetor or on the fuel delivery system, the regulator, one thing you're going to want to do after everything is reassembled is to perform what's called a leak test. And the leak test basically consists of taking a mixture of soap and water along with a brush, and then just brushing that mixture on all the fittings on the system. And if you see any bubbles form, that shows that there's a leak. And the thing you'll want to do is tighten up those fittings and then redo the water soap mixture, and just make sure that there are no bubbles showing anymore to make sure that you don't have any leaks. Basically concludes the proper procedure for changing out the fuel delivery system on the second generation Pro4. If anyone has any questions or concerns regarding this procedure, please feel free to contact us at the 2 locations noted on the screen. I'd like to take this time to thank you for your continued support of Jiffy products and the purchase of your Jiffy ice drill. And